Well, hello there. My name is Blade, and today I'll be reviewing The Last Showgirl. So, The Last Showgirl, you may be wondering why am I reviewing it now, because it had its film festival uh, run, we'll say, last year in 2024, and then it was not a huge awards contender, but it was an awards contender in the previous awards season, but it just barely had its wide theatrical release in January, and then it just hit streaming this month. Or well, actually, this is being posted in June, so May, but it just had its streaming release. So now that it's available to all of us, I'm here to review it. This is a movie that, contrary to a lot of the things that I talk about on this channel, you might be surprised, but I was very excited to see this once I started to hear more things about it, just because the Pamela Anderson of it all had me very intrigued. People were like, this is a really great performance from her, so I wanted to see it for myself. So without further ado, let's get into it. And normally I would say first off with spoiler free, but this review is actually going to be all spoiler free. I don't really think there's a lot to really say that involves spoilers. So, fun time. You all get to stay for the whole thing because it's all spoiler free. So, The Last Showgirl is about when the glittering Las Vegas revue she has headlined for decades announces it will close soon. Showgirl Shelly sets out to plan her next act. Reconciling the decision she's made, Shelly decides to repair her complicated relationship with her daughter. So essentially, it is about a showgirl who there's been this like long running, like 30-year long running Vegas like showgirl show, a little bit of like a nudie topless situation, the divas, if you will. It's coming to a close. There's a new act that's taking over their space. So this woman, Shelly, played by Pamela Anderson, has to deal with the fact that this thing is closing and she has to figure out what she's going to do with the rest of her life, and she's more up there in age now, so it's not going to be easy for her to secure another job in that same form of entertainment. And then also the show no longer existing makes her have to confront some things that she might have put on the back burner for years prior. So first and foremost, as always, I'm going to comment on the acting, and I would say this is a pretty well, oh, never pretty well, I think it's a greatly acted movie. There's no performances in this movie that are necessarily like bad or even like kind of like they're all good performances. But there's two performances I want to specifically talk about, which number one, let's talk about the lead, Miss Pamela Anderson, and I have to say she did in fact eat this movie up, this role and this performance. It was very emotional and beautiful, but also extremely eccentric, and I thought that was such an interesting balance. This character that she plays is really eccentric and kind of like high energy, but she meets that with these really emotionally compelling moments, and the interesting part is she doesn't lose her eccentricity, is that the word, eccentricity, in those moments either. She manages to somehow do both at the same time, and it's a very riveting watch. I think the final scene, it's one of those interesting scenes where I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's an interesting thing where there's no really like any dialogue or anything really big time taking place, but just what she's able to do with her face and her mannerisms is really emotional and powerful, and it did make me tear up a little bit. So I'm going to, I did say this early, like right after I watched the movie, but I'm going to be really candid and say that now that I've seen this movie, genuinely wish that she would have been an Oscar contender in the previous season, especially with the fiasco and the Gascon of it all. If you know, you know. I would have very happily given that slot to her. I honestly would have given that slot to her even before the fiasco, because that movie's not good, you guys, okay? So, Pamela Anderson, great job. We might have our first Blades Best in Show contender, because if you didn't know, I do my own little, like, mock award show thing at the end of the year. I talk about my favorite movies and music and stuff. They're separated by movies and music, but I do my own, like, categories and everything. It's just a fun little silly thing I do, but this movie technically only wide released this year, so by my little rules I made up, she could show up. But the one thing I really want to comment on the acting front is Jamie Lee Curtis is also in this movie. She plays Shelly's like best friend, and she was the one that was getting like, if she did get in anywhere, she didn't show up at a lot of places. I think she popped up at SAG. I'll put it up here, like I'll fact check myself, but she did get into one place, I think. But I found it really interesting that she was the choice they went with for the supporting actor submissions for this film, because don't get me wrong, like she's in enough screen time where like I can see her being like the counterpart, I guess, to Pamela Anderson. But there was another actress in this movie. I didn't even know it was in this movie until I started watching it, and I was very like happily surprised. But I didn't know she was in this movie, and I thought her performance was, for me, second to Pamela, the one that should have been like a contender in places, and that is Kiernan Shipka. I thought what she was giving was really good acting. Like she gave us, like, her character was so, I don't really know the word, but you understood who this girl was, and she does get some emotional beats as well, and I thought she really chewed up any screen time that she was on there. So for me personally, that's who I would have had being submitted to the different awards places personally. But you know, because Kiernan Shipka, also, let me talk about something really quick about Kiernan Shipka. She is an actress that I really like, and I'm glad she's popping up in more things, but she fully just pops up in movies. Like, she's never billed in the trailers or on the posters, and you just start watching the movie and it's like, oh, Kiernan Shipka's here. And I feel like they should be promoting her more, because she's a great actress, and for me personally, like, she would get me in my theater seat. So get up on that, studios. Other welcome surprises were Billy Lord and Brenda Song did not know they were in this movie, and they both did a great job. Dave Bautista was also in this, and I really enjoyed his performance. You know, he's somebody who I think gets kind of I think people try to dumb him down to just like he plays like the same role in every movie because he does like action movies and stuff sometimes, but he actually, I think, knows how to, he has some really great acting chops. And what I liked about his performance in this movie is it was a very subtle, like inner kind of performance, but it was still really good. Like, I understood who this man was, and I could see, you know, where he was coming from, just through like little tiny like mannerisms. But I think overall this is a very well acted movie. Next, I want to touch upon the cinematography and the editing, because this movie had kind of a strange little, like, you really have to look at it to notice it, but if you kind of look at the edges of the aspect ratio, it does have a little bit of a haze on it, and even a little bit of a once again, I'll put it right here because I can't remember the word, but it has that type of effect to, which I kind of liked, because I think since it was like Vegas and she's like a showgirl, I think it really matched the aesthetic of probably how she like perceives her glamorous life as being the showgirl. So I really liked that aspect. Now, I'm gonna get into something that I'm somewhere in the middle on, which is the writing and the narrative, because the writing is not bad. The writing is like 100% fine, but the narrative, it is one of those movies that I'm gonna say has a vanity aspect to it, and that's not a negative critique per se, but what I mean is, and it's not style over substance necessarily either. Like, vanity movies are movies that I consider like there is a storyline, but the storyline isn't necessarily like super like exciting, or there's not like necessarily a lot happening. It's just a little touch of a story with like good performances and a great look to it, but there's not necessarily like a strong narrative. So if you're somebody who really wants like a strong narrative, you might struggle with this movie, but it is something I still recommend because of Pamela Anderson's performance. But I can see why this movie maybe didn't take off the way that some people might have thought it would in award season. There's only one storyline that I wish was a little bit fleshed out more. There's something that happens with Kiernan Shipka's character, and I feel like we barely like touch the surface of it, and we don't even really like come back around to it either. But besides that, that's really my only like qualms with the film. So yeah, those are my thoughts, comments, and opinions on The Last Showgirl. Not really a lot to say here on this one, just because I don't have there's just I don't know. I just really don't feel the need to get into spoiler territory to talk about this film. And there's not, and by me saying there's not a lot to say, that's not like in any way a negative thing about the movie. It's just one of those things that like it's like straightforward about what it is, and there's not a lot of intricacies to get into. I just decided to make a review of it because I do kind of hope that people watch it, and it was something I was personally excited to see. And I also feel like since I do my Blades Best in Show at the end of the year, anything that I think might pop up in that like ceremony at the end of the year, I do like to cover. I'm starting to like want to cover now, just so my little tiny audience. I know there's not a lot of you, but the ones of you that are there, I feel like it helps to have some familiarity with the films before we get there. You know. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's a good movie. I recommend it if you're into Coppola. It's a Gia Coppola film, which I somehow am barely mentioning till now. You might like it. I think if you're somebody who's into acting performances, like you really get into the acting in films, and you might enjoy this. But that's all I really have to say, honestly. So if you watch this movie, feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments. But that's all I have for now. So I will see you in the next one.